Hi, I'm Annette D'Abreo, UK Managing Director at Ceuta Group, and this is the original Ceuta Group podcast. Today I'm joined by Client Management Director Louise Phillips and Pharmacy Commercial Controller Ben Knight, and we'll be discussing how to achieve growth in the UK health and wellness market, something that's becoming increasingly challenging, but arguably more exciting with the rising focus on health and self-care solutions in the UK and around the world. So, happy to have you both here. Welcome, Louise and Ben. Let's start off with the first question. You've got a new brand or an existing brand that you feel has potential, but isn't performing in the way that it should in the market. Where do you start?
Well, I think for me, you've got to go back to the start, which is the consumer, and put yourself in the consumer's shoes. So we really need to understand our consumer. Who are the people that would consider buying into this category? Who is actually already buying the category? And what's stopping those that don't buy into the category? What does the path to purchase look like? What are the key decisions that the consumer is making on that shopper journey? And what's really driving that purchase decision? Is it an emotional need? Is it a functional need? Why would they want to buy into that category? It's really important to understand that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think for me, do they know about the product? Are they using the product? Can they find the product? Probably those sort of questions and answers. I think, where would they expect to find it in the retailer? Is it easy to find? Are we making it easy for them to purchase, sending people in, etc.?
Yeah, all absolutely spot on points. And I think, so the next step then would be, well, how do our trade customers find us?
So I think there's a two-pronged approach. You've got to be physically available to your customers, but you've also got to be mentally available to your customers. And by that, I mean, do your customers know that you exist as a brand? So getting that brand awareness out there. But obviously, also, do they know where to find you? Is it online? Is it in store? Which stores is it? Is it the grocers? Is it a Boots or a Superdrug, or is it a discounter? Where would they expect to find you? And once you know where they expect to find you, then it's your job is to get the listings and get the distribution with those particular customers. Yeah. And to do that, you've got to create a compelling category story, put yourself in the buyer's shoes, and deliver a story that shows them how you're growing the category. You're not just coming with another Me Too brand or a brand that's doing the same as something else that's already there. You're bringing something new that's going to drive footfall into your stores and drive people to the category.
So yes, Ben, anything to add?
The only bit I would probably add to Louise is just around the complexities and the differences between online and in store.
Yeah.
And actually, if you're expecting your consumer to find you online, how you then play online, and the level of engagement you probably get with the consumer and the level of education that you can deliver to them versus sat on a shelf, it's a different market. It's a different operating method to get that message.
Well, to that point, sort of once you've got your distribution both online and offline, how then do you grow your brand?
Well, I come back to the point I made earlier about mental availability and making sure that consumers know about your product. You have to have a 360-degree marketing plan that drives awareness of your brand, that drives consideration, and that has real impact. It's got to be engaging. It's got to cut through the noise. As consumers, we're exposed to so many different brands on a daily basis. You've really got to stand out. You've really got to have a USP, so that when consumers do get into store, they already have an awareness of your brand, and they're much more receptive to purchasing it when they see it in store.
That's sort of linked into the next point, which is about how do you make sure that people can find you, because it isn't always the easiest thing. It isn't taken for granted that once you've got a listing, consumers are just going to go in and see you there.
I think arguably actually probably one of the easier pieces is just getting that listing and actually getting the product on the shelf. The difficulty is then getting that product to move sufficiently in the numbers to get off the shelf for two reasons. One, you want your brand to be successful, but second of all, that buyer from the retailer that's put it there will be under some pressure at some stage from somebody else trying to get that space or expand the category. So for me, whether or not you're looking at a Boots or a Superdrug within pharmacy or Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda, etc., it's around high level visibility and making it just dead easy for the consumer to purchase. So I would split it in two ways. So first of all, if you look in store, you can take things like your mid-gondolas, you can take things like your FSDUs. I wonder how many consumers actually know how much people are paying to take that sort of premium space, I mean, it's expensive. And then whether or not you run sort of price overlay offers, or multi-buy. I guess that sort of depends on the brand that you've got. And actually, if you've got something like a VMS product, the idea that it's on a multi-buy is probably quite sensible, that you take people out in the market for sort of 2-3 months on end. If you've got a product like a head lice product, actually probably doing a depth of discount so you stand out versus your competitors there. Let's face it, it's fairly seasonal. You get sort of one use out of it. People shouldn't be buying 2, 3, 4, throughout the course of the year. So a price is probably better there than that multi-buy. But I think the visibility is massive. It gets more product on shelf. If you look at a mid-gondola, you get sort of a metre of space sort of taken up. If you look at an FSD, you can get many products on there, and you've got huge premium space. And actually, yes, it's good to sell the product, but it's good for the brand to get that brand awareness. And you think how many consumers are walking past versus when you're doing your above the line and how you're sort of targeting them that way.
I think also, Louise, it's really to make sure that once you're visible, you need to get that purchase. And Ben has talked about the different mechanics, but it's about above the line and below the line, isn't it? It's what is that mixture?
It's understanding the shopper as well, because I talked about that earlier. Is a shopper more likely to pick it up if it's an impulse purchase, in which case you want to be sited near till point, somewhere out of aisle? Or is it something that's a destination shop that they've made a conscious decision beforehand that they want to go and buy that product, in which case you want to be sited in the main fixture with all products within that category? So again, understanding your shopper has implications for how you're merchandised and where you are in store. It feeds through the whole decision process.
And I think, Louise, also understanding the retailer that
Absolutely.
you're in, because actually fundamentally, if you go into a Boots or Superdrug, you're going in there to pick up a healthcare product. If you go into a grocer's, you're 9 times out of 10 going in there to pick up your grocery shopping and then adding something into that sort of trolley and basket.
And so, Louise and Ben, when we approach a retailer with a brand, we have quite a specific approach, don't we? Because we know what the retailers are looking for. Louise, can you just sort of give us sort of the outline of how we go about it?
Yes, we have a very category-led approach. If you think about it, a buyer's not really interested in a brand that's going to come in and do the same thing and steal sales from another brand that's sitting on the shelf doing exactly the same. They're looking for brands that are going to grow your category, that are going to drive consumers into your stores. We have a category team that will really examine what's going on in the market. They'll look at the environment through a number of different lenses. They'll look at macro environmental factors. They'll look at the consumer. They'll look at the shopper, the retailers, understanding exactly what's going on. And we'll pull together a category proposition that is really relevant to the retailers. It's really relevant to their shoppers. But most importantly, it delivers insights. It explains why shoppers are shopping that category. It explains what they're looking for in that shopper, and it helps us to figure out what we could do differently in the category to drive more sales. And really importantly, from a retailer's point of view, if they're going to take a punt on a new product, they want to know what the size of that opportunity is. So we need to quantify what we think we can bring to the category in order to get the buyers buy-in.
I think sometimes people forget that they are saying, actually, I'm giving this shelf space where I know what I'm returning to something else. So you've got to tell me why this is going to improve the return from this 2, 3, 4, 5 inches.
We often hear from our buyers, my shelves aren't elastic. I just can't keep putting more products on the shelf.
It's probably like,
why does your product?
One of the most common phrases in all the years I've done it, they don't have elastic shelves. And actually, over the years, .com has been sort of almost like a go-to place because they're not hindered by those shelves. And even they are now sort of struggling just because of the picking and the packing slots that they sort of operate out of a DC or an SSC. So I think the elastic shelf point is correct. And, ultimately you're asking somebody to take a product off a shelf, which is a known figure and a value that they're getting. And what you're trying to do is convince them that actually we're going to be generating something new, something extra, something value added there. I think what we've probably seen more recently is an appetite for, when I say sort of real new, i.e. not just shifting from one brand into your brand, because that's great for us and it's great for the brand owner, but it's meaningless, relatively speaking, for the buyer, because actually it's the same set of numbers that sort of generated just across a different brand. So if people are sat on ideas that are in a category where there isn't a direct competitor there for, i.e. it's category additive, I think that's what the buyers are really sort of looking for now. How, I don't want a third or a fourth version of what I've already got. Give me something I haven't got, and I'd be tempted to get rid of the third or fourth version of what I've got for that space.
And it's actually, it's a great exercise to do, isn't it? It's really enjoyable. We all have very inquisitive minds at Ceuta, and I think one of the things that we love doing is just digging in to find the story and working with our client to say, actually, this is the bit that's going to unlock it. And actually, when you and your colleagues are talking to the buyers and there's something that the buyer didn't know, that's a great Eureka moment.
Yeah, and I think the buyers probably enjoy that because it's something different. It's a learning process for them. I equally think because, so I say my team and all of the teams, actually, because the personnel have been there, they're well experienced, they've got those relationships with the buyers, and they've launched brands, whether or not they've started off, small budgets, medium budgets, big budgets, and across, off the top of my head, probably 30, 40 different categories, anything from the sort of top of your head down to your toes. So, they've got the experience. And I'd say everything that we've launched, hesitant just because I'm just making sure I'm not missing anything, has been a success, clearly on sort of different levels. Some have been astronomical, and some have been just exceptionally very good. But I think the buyers value what we take because they know that we've sort of sense checked. We've done a lot of that work beforehand, in terms of that data, what the plans are, etc. And we've seen that opportunity exists for them, and of course it's then sort of just converting them or convincing them.
So we did touch on this a bit earlier, but there are some very specific mechanics that you can use. That the retailers give us, just sort of outline, sort of briefly, what those key areas are that we tend to look at.
So I think, if we look at, Louise earlier sort of touched on data and understanding our sort of consumer, when we're presenting. The retailers and their understanding of the consumer is probably second to none. If you look at the data that they can now sort of harvest and, whether or not that's Boots with their ad card, whether or not it's Tesco's with Dunnhumby and Sainsbury's with Nectar, they know their consumer incredibly well. But equally, that also enables us probably better than ever to target exactly who we want to. So if you're a mum of children of a certain age and we think we've got a product that ticks the box, then we can sort of target that individual, whether or not that's through email, whether or not that's through coupons through the post. And if you look at how they've sort of continued to sort of see data as a massive tool for them, one of the main drivers behind sort of Boots' price advantage sort of scheme, if you look at what Tesco's have done with and Sainsbury's, and those prices only being available to, let's call it loyalty card holders, is to get more and more data and get more loyalty card holders so they can sort of then harvest and tap into that consumer even more so. So it's important that we know what we're going in with. It's equally important that once we're in there that we start understanding really quickly as to who is purchasing it. Who's purchased similar products or who's purchased products in that category. How do we go about sort of targeting them? If you look at baby, just as an example, if we had a baby product targeting people that have sort of picked up some nappies or something like that, all of a sudden, we've got a tick box. Our product would be unrelated to nappies, but we've got a product that sort of complements it. I think at least that way we're more likely to convert them. We're talking to the right consumer.
Well, I think it's about minimising wastage as well, isn't it? Really, nobody has, nobody tells us you can have whatever money you want. This is about managing budgets in the right way, in a prudent way, in getting the maximum return for the money, and we have to make choices in that respect.
Absolutely, and I think having all of that data at our disposal means that we can make really smart choices and make the right decisions so that we're investing our money smartly and we're getting the best return on investment that we can get.
Absolutely.
And I think on the data, yes, it's the loyalty cards, but it's equally, when you look at the EPOS data that we get sort of generated from all of these retailers, I say daily, they sort of largely come through on a weekly basis. But, drilling into what stores selling what, how many of those units, what stores are suffering, how much stock is in store, Why is one store doing particularly well versus others? How's that looking like at the category? I think there's two elements to this. One, which is the consumer, and then the other in terms of sort of drilling into those stores. And I touched earlier in terms of sort of the activity that you can do in store, whether or not it's the mid-gondolas, the FSDUs. Actually, the idea that you can now see how those stores perform with that in is really super useful when you start to analyse how effective it's been.
Absolutely.
Especially when you look at how some of those retailers have adapted over time and the point of sale options that they now give, whether that's aisle fins and floor stickers, which historically didn't used to really exist. The idea now that you've got those and you can get a report that sort of says, okay, well, you've run them in 150 stores and it's generated this, but in these other 150 where they're not, you only got this, I think is a really useful
It's
tool.
a very rich data that we get now, and it's critical.
And I think, sorry, Annette, the one other point to that, which is really useful for clients, if they're doing above the line or advertising of sorts, but they're doing it in a location, the idea that all of a sudden you can drill into those stores which overlap where they've run, whether or not it's the TV advert, the print, I'm not saying it's test and learn, but can almost encourage them or give them the confidence that they can then expand that into other regions.
But
as
it
well.
also means that if you have a limited budget, you can use that data to select which regions, for example, you want to invest in. Most advertising businesses now will enable you to advertise in certain television regions, for example, so you don't have to invest in a nationwide campaign. So using that data is really, really important.
For a brand to be on the shelf, stay on the shelf, and to grow and develop, that word of mouth, that great experience, it's a matter of consistent investment, isn't it? It's a matter of keeping your brand visible as long as possible.
I think it's the investment. I think it's about having a good product as well, and possibly adapting that product.
Yeah.
And
Fundamentally,
and
it's
sort of
having
building
a
from
good
there.
product that works well.
And the reason I always sort of say when we look at a brand when it first comes on, how good is that product? What's the need for it? Because fundamentally, if you've got that really, really good product, all those other bits then sort of start dropping into place. You get the support from the retailers, the buyers. You get the support in terms of getting the activity that you want in store, which is not particularly easy as it stands. And actually, you've then got sort of a sensible run rate in terms of rate of sale. Your distribution should follow, other retailers should follow, and sales build on the back of it. And I guess equally, the more that you sell, the more it probably unlocks for you then to sort of spend in terms of that above the line or below the line, and building your brand going forwards.
And it's up to us to communicate as well, be very visible, which is what we do through our sales managers. We're making sure that we are telling them all the great support that's going on and what's happening. But it's a nice collaboration with our clients, isn't it? When it goes right, it goes very right. Are there any final thoughts from either of you in this area?
I think I would say it's not easy launching a new brand in the UK consumer healthcare market. There are lots of failed brands out there, but we can help with that. We've worked in this area for a long time, and getting the category proposition right, understanding your shopper, understanding your consumer, and knowing what the retailer is looking for. That's something we can help with.
Great, good.
And I think for me, engagement with retailers really early doors. So certainly in the role that I do, the idea that you sort of take them as part of the journey, I think buyers really enjoy that.
Yeah.
And it helps them sort of build an attachment to the brand. And I think, just in terms of numbers, both above the line and below the line, all of the brands really need to have sort of sufficient investment behind them, just to sort of get that sort of turnover and the traction going, and it really sort of spirals from there.
If you have any questions or feedback, or would like to find out more about launching or growing a consumer healthcare brand in the UK, please feel free to get in touch with us at ceutagroup.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and we welcome suggestions for another potential podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe to the podcast and share it with anyone you think will find it interesting.